If you're familiar with Train Sim World, you might remember Dovetail's Loco add-on bundles, of which 2 have been released in the TSW3 era. These packs are lazy at best and pointless at worst, but this practice dates back to somewhere around the mid-2010s in TS Classic, if not earlier. Today, I'm showing you what I consider to be one of the most half-assed add-ons ever made for Train Simulator Classic, and that is the London Transport Heritage Collection. Released in May 2017, this pack was meant to be a celebration of all things London transport, or so Dovetail wanted us to believe. The trouble is, none of the items in this add-on were actually new to Train Simulator, not even the route. More on that later. At the normal price, this add-on is a bit too expensive, costing 24 New Zealand dollars, and I reckon it shouldn't cost any more than $17. One of the locomotives that comes with this pack is the Class 20. More specifically, a London Transport reskin of the ex-Iron Horse House model that was sold to Dovetail around the time IHH went out of business. When you're in the scenario editor, you can normally click on a locomotive, coach or wagon, in this case we have a Class 27 diesel locomotive, to change the number. There's a little window in that pop-out box on the right, into which you can type a number. Then press the Enter key to make the new number appear on the model. Dynamic numbering is absent on the London Transport Class 20, and the double header in one of the scenarios looks really dumb when both locomotives have the same number. You also get the Great Western Railway 5700 class 060 Pannier Tank in London Transport Maroon. This is a reskin of the 5700 that comes with the questionable Riviera line in the 50s pack, alongside other GWR steamers of fluctuating quality. Looking at you, Modified Hall. Hell, you can still see the spaces on the cab sides and smokebox door where the BR era number plates used to be. Normally, I don't use this reskin at all, as I prefer to use the superior Victory Works version instead. There is a supposedly weathered version included in the default pack, but there is absolutely sod all difference from the pristine version, apart from a slightly dirtier smokebox door. The last item of motive power included in this pack is the 1938 tube stock. This is a backdated version of the existing Class 483 model that came with the original and now severely outdated Isle of Wight route, complete with the same inaccurately modelled cab front and everything. At the very least, the interior of this train looks nice, I'll give it that. Dovetail also altered the model to get a cabless trailer coach, which, in real life, was done away with as the refurbished Class 483s were only ever 2-car units. The tired old 483s were finally withdrawn in early 2021, and have since been replaced by former D78 stock units that were heavily rebuilt by Viva Rail, now designated as Class 484. As for the passenger coaches and freight wagons, this side of the pack is even more pathetic than the motive power, because DTG didn't even bother changing the liveries on this lot. The Network Southeast Mark II coaches look incredibly dated, as they are recycled from the old NSE Class 47 pack, which was originally released in August 2010. Upon closer inspection, I realised that these are just reskins of the default Kuju era Mark II coaches, which date back to 2007. Here is a Class 14 teddy bear shunting one of the original coaches for comparison. Meanwhile, the Southern Railway 4-wheel coaches are recycled from the Isle of Wight pack, released in June 2012. And, hang about, why does this pack have coaches in Southern and NSE colours when it's supposed to have a London Transport theme? The real LT Pannier Tanks didn't even haul passenger trains until preservation, for Pete's sake. Those SR coaches only look even more pathetic when you realise that they're labelled as push-pull in the scenario editor, despite just being modelled as normal coaches. It's not like the auto coaches that come with the Great Western Railway 1400 class, which actually work as a push-pull formation with the locomotive. While there is a passenger view, it's only in one of the saloons with a static Mr. Chairman for company. So you can't even sit in the guards compartment while looking out the back and pretending to operate the train in a push-pull configuration. This is a demonstration of what I mean, using an LNER Y6 tram engine propelling some wagons and a GWR towed brake van. Sometimes I just don't care for historical accuracy. On the freight side, you'll get conflats, TTA tankers, 16-ton mineral wagons, and a bog-standard brake van of some sort. These are the same old 16-ton wagons that date back to the Kuju era, and I don't know where this brake van model originally came from. But the one in this pack is recycled from Dovetail's re-release of the ex-IHH British Railways 9F steam locomotive, one of the worst steam add-ons in the whole game. The conflats are also reused from the original Phorum Peninsula, or whichever add-on was the first to include this rather basic model. Besides the default motive power in the LT Heritage pack, there's also some freeware London Underground stock made by Richard Scott, with one example being the LT Standard stock. This was formerly available on UK Train Sim before the site was discontinued at the end of August 2023. Victory Works also included the LT Red livery for the GWR 4575 class in their Small Prairies pack, in order to represent the preserved 5521 in her L150 guise, but the lettering on the tanks read Capital Railways by default. There was a small patch from UKTS that replaced the default text with something authentic, but of course it's not available anymore. I'm starting to think that maybe, just maybe, shutting down UKTS was a really bad idea. The route is a heavily modified version of Phorum Peninsula, an add-on that was made many years ago as part of a charity event, where the challenge was to make a route in 24 hours. While that old route is now looking incredibly outdated by today's standards, this modified version is much worse than the original for two main reasons. For whatever reason, Dovetail got rid of the tram line at St Bilton, now called Vindelis, for whatever reason. This would have been a good opportunity to include an old London tram, something like the double-decker E1 for example. A reskin of R. Scott's freeware E1 model actually came with the original Phorum Peninsula, which makes the tram line's absence in this modified route even more frustrating. There were a pair of 2-foot 3-inch gauge branch lines on the original Phorum Peninsula, a passenger line from the old pier to Gray's Point, and a freight-only line from the Scarlet Bay Exchange sidings to the stone quarry in the middle of the island. Rather frustratingly, these were pointlessly converted to standard gauge, thus reducing the amount of unique services that you can run on this quote-unquote upgraded route. As far as I'm concerned, it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. Fortunately, there is a modified version of the LT Heritage route on Steam Workshops that has the tram line reinstated, albeit with assets from that weird Academy route and the overhead wires that can't properly accommodate a double-decker tram. Annoyingly, the former narrow gauge branches are still on standard gauge. And don't even get me started on some of the downright laughable station names. The existing stations have all been renamed, for seemingly no reason. The new stations that Dovetail added have names that scream, "These were thought up at the last minute." That sounds like a good summary of the entire add-on, if you ask me. I don't understand why Dovetail dressed up the stations with Network Southeast decals. Do remember that this pack is supposed to have a London Transport theme, not NSE. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the 1938 stock looks completely out of place running in a mostly rural environment like this. The only underground part of the route is a short tunnel between Channel Station, formerly Pedalstown, and the exchange sidings near the quarry. I will say that at least the motive power in this LT Heritage pack is more tolerable than what we got with the original Phorum Peninsula. Seriously, that S100 tank engine made by Iron Horse House was absolutely dreadful. You also got basic models of the Class 07 and EMD SW1500. The former has since been superseded by Skyhook Games' version, plus basic coaches and wagons to boot. There's a lot of stuff in that original add-on that hasn't aged well at all. At the southern end of the causeway linking the mainland to this island, there is a level crossing. Because the trigger distance is incorrect, vehicles will continue to zip through the crossing as your train is approaching, and while the train is still going through the crossing. There's a glitch with the lights on the 1938 stock. When you press the H key to turn on the headlights, they will not work while the tail lights can still come on as normal. Why this still hasn't been fixed is anyone's guess. I also noticed that the water tower seen at Vindelis and Stony Point is reused from the West Somerset Railway. I only know this because that exact same water tower model can be seen at Minehead, and I think it's a GWR design. Just when you thought it couldn't get any stupider, we have the included scenarios. All in career mode, of course, because career mode is apparently a justified and totally necessary feature gimmick in this game. One of them, called the Heritage Show, is badly flawed, because it has you drive a Pannier Tank on a top and tail formation with the Class 20. It would appear that Dovetail forgot, or didn't care about the fact that steam locomotives do not work in tandem with diesels in this game. As a result, the 5700's reverser will get stuck as soon as the train starts moving, and consequently the boiler pressure rapidly drains away. Not helping the situation is the 1 in 38 climb right outside Vindelis, and it's impossible to run on time because the 5700 slows down to a crawl on that incline. The Class 20 doesn't actually do any of the work, so all in all, this scenario is pretty much unplayable. The other Pannier Tank scenario, called Dehydration Emergency, is at least functional. In this one, you have to run your locomotive from Vindelis to Stony Point, the latter formerly being called Gray's Point, while she's dangerously low on water, then refuel at Stony Point before returning to Vindelis. To add to the issues, the 5700 doesn't even show a number in the scenarios, just the letter L when it should show something like L89 or L94. Don't quote me on this, but apparently the scenarios were made before the scripting on the locomotive was finished. Make of that what you will. The scenarios for the 1938 stock aren't much better than the two for the 5700, as all they amount to is slightly different stopping passenger services. The Class 20, on the other hand, is mainly used to haul freight or works trains, but her scenarios are too mediocre for my liking. Such is the nature of a small route where you haven't got a lot to do. Personally, I think this add-on is an insult to fans of the London Underground, such as myself. It's a weird combination of lazily recycled and reskinned content on a route where the motive power looks completely out of place, and there's no way I could ever recommend it to anyone. Now if only you could still run backdated train sims East to London line without this garbage heritage collection. That's just about the only reason why I've still got that thing installed.